What's up, everybody? It's Izzy from PowerliftingToWin, and we're going to have the first installment of the question and answer series today. And so what I'm going to be addressing is when to use a belt in your training. Now, for whatever reason, this is a pretty controversial subject with opinions ranging from everywhere to you should only use a belt on max attempts, or you should only use a belt above 90%, or you should only use a belt 4 weeks before your meet, and you should do your whole off season without a belt. To other people who say you should wear a belt when you're warming up with the bar. So, as you guys probably have anticipated, I find most of these opinions too extreme and a bit ridiculous. Let's answer this question using the tools that we've learned thus far, namely specificity. So the law of specificity states that you are going to get what you train for. We can have a perfect program in terms of fatigue management, in terms of auto-regulation, in terms of using good progressive overload. But if that program is for swimming, it's not going to make too big of a difference to our lifts, is it? Now, specificity is a continuum. So we could move closer on that continuum. Let's say we had a program that was perfectly optimized for good mornings. Now, there's a much higher rate of transference between good mornings and, say, squats and deadlifts than there is between swimming and squats and deadlifts, right? If we go further along the specificity continuum, closer and closer to specific, it's pretty obvious that a beltless variant, such as a beltless squat or a beltless deadlift, is about as close to the main competition lift as a variant can get. It's just a simple piece of equipment, right? So you're gonna get a very high rate of transference with beltless movements. So here's the thing. Beltless movements are still not as specific, if we want to get even more specific, as doing the competition style movement with a belt. And if you are interested in powerlifting, you must own a belt. No matter what your training age is, I don't care if you've been training for 3 days, you need to own a belt. Because in competition, you're going to use a belt, so your belted squat is the specific form of the lift that you are trying to improve. And if you're not squatting in a belt, you're costing yourself anywhere from 30 to 50 pounds on your total. Maybe more if you combine squat and deadlift. So it's really not optional, you need a belt. And in fact, I wrote an entire article about belts, I just never made a video for it, and I'm gonna throw a link in the description box to that article, so if you guys are interested in like what type of belt you should get, how to know whether a belt is good, where to get your belt, that kind of thing, it'll be in that article. When you are going for like an 8-week period or 12 weeks or whatever it is without using your belt, you're going a long time without addressing the competition form of the movement. So if specificity is lower in your training, the rate of transference to your 1 rep max with competition gear is also going to be lower. You're going to get damn good at beltless squats and deadlifts because that's what you're practicing. But the bottom line is that when you're wearing things like knee wraps and belts, it literally changes the mechanics of the movement to some degree. With knee wraps, it's quite significant. With a belt, it's less significant, but it's still observable and confirmed in the literature. So if you're not using a belt, in my opinion, on at least one of your workouts during the week, let's say you squat 2, 3, 4 times a week, even in the earliest part of the off season when you're the furthest away from the meet, and specificity is going to be lower because that's appropriate in the off season, you still should have at least one workout with a belt. That's your competition style and you should never go too far away from it. Now, what about within the workout? Should you put it on when you're warming up with the bar? Should you put it on when you're warming up with a plate, 2 plates, 3 plates? It's 80%, 90%, what's the deal? The way that I do it is I put on my belt for my last warm-up set and all of my work sets if that movement is supposed to be a belted movement that day. Now here's the reason why I do this. A lot of you guys say maybe, oh, I'm only going to put on a belt above 80% or I'm only going to put on a belt above 90%. But what you have to realize is that a beltless squat is not equivalent to a belted squat. It's like saying, oh, I'm going to box squat until I'm over 80%. What? That doesn't make any sense. There are 2 different movements. And that's the way you have to think about a beltless squat and a belted squat too. They're 2 different movements. So if I'm trying to do 80% for my work sets on squat and it calls for a belt that day, I'm going to put on my belt for all those work sets. and the last warm-up before that, because it allows me to get used to the new equipment before I go straight into my heaviest weights of the day. So for example, if I'm doing like mad cows, right? When I did mad cows, my top set ended up being like 445 for 5. That was the best I ever did. But the only sets that I used a belt on were the last two. So I did 405 for 5 with a belt, and then I would do 440 for 5 with a belt as well. But all of my warm-ups up to that point were without a belt. So simultaneously, as I got stronger and my warm-ups got heavier and heavier, my beltless squat went up as well. So that's basically my suggestion for it, guys. I recommend that you wear your belt within a workout for your last warm-up and all of your work sets. And as for the macro perspective, everybody should have a belt as soon as they start training. It's the most important piece of equipment that you can own. Get one immediately if you don't have one, and start using it on your work sets immediately, because this is about specificity. If you're serious about powerlifting, you need a belt, and you need to train with a belt. And as far as this idea goes that you should do like 8 to 12 weeks without a belt, would you ever do 8 to 12 weeks doing only box squats as a raw drug-free powerlifter? Probably not, right? So why would you not apply the same logic to beltless squats? Even though they are more specific than, say, box squats, they're still less specific than belted squats. Period. Your training specificity needs to be high if you want to have an optimal rate of transference and carryover to your 1 rep max in competition conditions. All right? So if you don't have a belt, get one. That's all, guys. If you have more questions for me, leave a comment below or pop on over to the PowerliftingToWin forums, and I will be sure to address your questions in the next Q&A. So if you guys found this content informative, interesting, or entertaining, please like, share, and send it out into the interwebs for me. Subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to check out PowerliftingToWin.com for more great powerlifting information. Have a nice day.